I know that Roxy is going to go crazy on this. All I have to say is there's 13 disciples at the Last Supper, and there's 13 aunts at the table. Jesus is the seventh seat from the left, and so is Aunt Lydia, and we know one of Jesus' disciples ended up betraying him, so I wonder which one of these disciples is going to betray Aunt Lydia.
Supper, sitting directly to Jesus's left, so while we're looking at the right, or from our perspective, the right, was Judas. And sitting there was Aunt Ruth. So there, I mean, they can't spell it out for us any more clearly. Also, fun side note, there's speculation that the person that actually sat to Jesus's right, so what we would view as our left, was Mary Magdalene, and we get a call to that later on in the episode, which I absolutely loved. But yeah, so but in this case, it's John that's seated to the right, and John has to lean on the bosom of Christ to ask of the identity of the betrayer, and they even double down like with I think it was Matthew 26, 22, 23, that they say that Judas was sitting to Jesus's left. So we know that that is Aunt Lydia's betrayer, as clear as fucking day, and it's Aunt Ruth. Something that I noticed that I'm assuming that Marjorie noticed as well, because Holy Light Theory and everything that plays in the background in the Last Supper painting, as well as in this scene, there are 3 massive lights behind them, which we saw over and over again in the last episode, was these 3 like lights that were overhanging in the background. And we see, like, even in the last scene with Serena and her prison baby shower, in her prison, or in her room, she has those big 3 picture windows that let the light in. So there's that same sort of thing. Also, in the Last Supper, the apostles were all sat in groups of 3, because because those are the 3 like apostles, or in this case the 3 wives, or the 3 aunts that are eating from the same bowls.
I liked how they did this. It was just an instant recognition thing, and I was just like, oh, I like what you did there. It was cool. It was really perfectly displayed. This conversation, though, so Janine is serving them, and she's overhearing this conversation, and she is appalled because we've got Aunt Ruth over here suggesting restraints and a feeding tube for Esther. Like, Jesus Christ. And then we have Aunt Lydia trotting out tongue removal, and Janine pretty much gags here, and that's understandable. Janine has been subject to this. She is not missing an eyeball for nothing. Or actually, yeah, she is missing an eyeball for exactly nothing. But she's missing an eyeball for reasons that Esther has been displaying since she ended up at the Red Center. And this really disturbs her. I could absolutely see where she's horrified by this. Janine doesn't want this to happen to anybody,
Janine understands,
even if it is
as well
Esther.
as anyone, the sort of trauma that can come from the sort of habitual abuse that both of them have had to endure, and that Esther had to endure at that same young age that Janine had to endure. And neither of them were given the tools, to properly like work through that or heal from that.
Yeah.
I did enjoy some of the banter that was happening back and forth between the aunts as well after Janine was excused to the kitchen. Like, what commander would want her with her history? You should have sent her to the breeding colonies when you had the chance, as was the original discussion. First off, what commander would want her with her history? I think Larry would have good use for her. She might not be the smartest, but she's got tenacity. The breeding colonies, cool. We're talking about those again.
Weren't they the Mary Magdalene colonies too? The Magdalene colonies?
They were the Magdalene. Yep, the Magdalene colonies. And then you get the notion of like the considering of the precedent of special treatment. That's the second time that's one of the 2 times that word shows up in this episode, and I think it's very important. But the precedent of special treatment, as soon as you give Janine special treatment and show her that favoritism, which we already know that Janine is Lid's favorite, it puts Lydia into a very dangerous situation, because she's not supposed to be playing any of this off of emotion.
But she is trying to use logic. I mean, she sells them on how valuable Janine is, because she's like, she produces babies and she saves babies. And what's more important than a child in Gilead? Literally nothing. So look at how valuable she is. So I am not sure if Aunt Lydia knows exactly what she needs to do with Janine yet, but she feels like it's a necessity to try to keep Janine as safe as possible. She really does see Janine kind of as her like her special person. And I mean, how much does it suck to be Aunt Lydia's special person? One could say it would be fucking terrible, but in this case, no, I think you'd want to be Aunt Lydia's special person.
Ultimately, Aunt Lydia sees Janine as her ward, and we had extrapolated back in season 3 when we saw Aunt Lydia's backstory, that she sees Janine as a second chance of redemption for the way that she drove away that single mother whose name totally escapes me presently. Thank you. Yes. How she drove Noelle away and effectively caused Noelle to be separated from her child after Noelle had like forged this kinship with her. So I think Lydia's doing everything that she can to repent for past sins by trying to make that up with Janine. And she knows that when Janine is loyal, she is extremely useful as well. So it's very clever of her to keep herself ingratiated with Janine.
Janine has learned a lot too. It's very clear to see. I don't think that we're going to see any more of the hysterical, irrational Janine that needs coddling. I think Janine is going to be able to firmly hold her own now. And that sensitivity is an asset of hers right now. And if this is going where we think it might be going, her sensitivity is needed.
And I think with Janine, there's a lot of growth and acceptance of she knows what her role is, and she's okay with not pushing the boundaries and working within them. Whereas June always loved to push the boundaries, and Janine, we've seen it's taken her a while to even get to a point where she could respond appropriately, be expected and relied upon to respond without the emotion.
Well, I think that she's responding with emotion, but she's harnessing it now.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
It's almost as though going through this daunting experience of going to Chicago taught her that sometimes, yes, you do need to be brash and brazen, but there's something to be said for being methodical as well.
And I think that Janine has learned our favorite word, restraint. That's like kind of inadvertently the word of the episode. But that's exactly what it is. She's really learned to just chill out and assess the situation and be clever. And be clever instead of reactive.